Good evening. You're very welcome to this, the fifth instalment of the Spring series from myself and my colleagues here in Teagasc, Sligo, Leitrim, Donegal. My name is Cian Condon. I'm a dry stock advisor based in Manorhamilton in County Leitrim, and I'll be your host here this evening. Now, tonight the focus moves to cattle breeding, and firstly, Brendan Caslin of the Ballymote office will outline everything that's required to keep you and your family safe at this time of year, particularly with regard to bulls. And then secondly, Gary Fisher of the Letterkenny office will be discussing bull fertility and maximising breeding performance this year. Now, though we all know we can't meet face to face, we still want to keep things as interactive as possible. And at the bottom of your screen, you will find a question and answer function. And please feel free to send in your questions and comments to the panel right the way through this evening. And I will put it to them towards the end as we approach 9 o'clock. So firstly, Brendan, I'll call on you to share your screen. If you can go ahead and do that, and hopefully we can begin.
Thanks, Cian, for the introduction there. So the topic for tonight is cattle breeding, planning the next steps is one part, and the second part then is health and safety. And I just want to introduce myself. I'm Brendan Caslin I'm a dry stock advisor here based in Teagasc and Ballymote, and Gary Fisher will be doing the second part, a colleague of mine based in Donegal. So. Right, the outline of the presentation. So breeding suckler cows and heifers, first part, and the second part, which I think is very, very important, is the health and safety at breeding time. So that would involve managing the stock bull and safety on the farm. So just to give you a bit of background on the current breeding situation. So the average calving interval at the moment is 395 days. It's not 365 days as most of us would like. So what that means is basically your average cow is calving every 13 months. As this increases, the kilos of live weight sold per cow decreases, right? So less than 20% of cows calve within 12 months. And the third point there, the average age at first calving is about 31 months. Point 4 there, about 20% of cows are recycled per year. And that could be from spring calving to autumn calving, or from autumn calving to spring calving, and worse still, from autumn to autumn or spring to spring. Cows are producing an average of 0.88 calves per year. And so what that really means in reality is that we'll say there's roughly 1 million suckler cows in the country approximately. And it means that there's about 120,000 of them are walking around empty. So it just gives you an idea of the amount of productive cows and empty cows that are in the country. The 6-week calving rate currently is about 60% for the 4 different calving times, which I would class as either early spring, late spring, summer, or autumn. So as with any national averages, they tend to hide the very good breeding cows or heifers and also the not so good. So within statistics, you have very good and very bad. But the good news is that breeding has been gradually improving in the last few years and hopefully will continue to do so. Regarding breeding with suckler cows, we'll say shortly in the next sort of couple of months for most spring calving herds, we'll say I'll cover artificial insemination. Gary is covering stock bulls later on. He has a very good presentation on stock bulls and semen testing. So AI, which I'll be covering, has both advantages and disadvantages. So just some of the simple stuff. You have a huge selection of sires available. There's several AI stations out there. The several breeder selling bulls that are suitable for AI, will say, that have been export tested, whatever, semen wise. Every breed is available. There's 50 or 60 different breeds available. You can select for what you want, for example. So we'll say if you take Havanese for heifers, a lot of farmers will say if they're calving 2-year-old or 2.5 or 3-year-old heifers, will say would put something like an easy calving Angus bull on the heifers. You can pick from several different Angus bulls. The other advantage of the AI is you have all the bulls that are available now, that are alive now, but you can go back 40, 50 years with some AI straws. You can select for confirmation if you want to go for heavily muscle type Belgian blue or Charlie type bulls for selling fancy weanlings and the mart, maternal type bulls to breed replacements. So you're talking about good cemental bulls, we'll say, to breed you nice heifers to cross back, we'll say, with Charlie bulls or limousine bulls or whatever. High growth rates, again, your Charlie type bulls. And then there's also kind of a niche area for slaughter bonuses. For example, Angus bulls for the certified Angus scheme, where you get bonuses for killing AA or AA cross cattle on the blue cards. If you want, you can match 20 different bulls to 20 different cows, so there's huge selection there. If you fully AI, it also stops the need to keep and handle a stock bull on the farm from a health and safety point of view. That's very, very important. So as with any disadvantages, we'll be fair. There are also disadvantages. So it doesn't suit some farmers to AI cows or heifers for that matter. A large number of suckler farmers also have a part-time job. A lot of you on the call on the webinar tonight will be working during the day. You're gone early in the morning, the same as ourselves. So it's not always suitable. You might not be around the yard or the crush, we'll say, when the eye technician, male or female, is calling on you. Most West of Ireland farms we cover, Sligo, Leitrim, Donegal, are fragmented and do not have a yard and crush in every division. I've come across clients with up to 17 different parcels. We all have small sections of ground all over the place. It's not always one block of an area of ground. The disadvantage to continue there, will say the help is not always available on farms to get these cattle in, especially with busy roads every time a cow is in heat. So I'll go through a good bit of health and safety in a few minutes. A disadvantage that has to be mentioned is repeats with AI versus a fertile stock bull. So if you're hitting 65, 70%, we'll say hit rate with your AI, you're doing very well. So you will have repeats, whereas if you compare that to a fertile stock bull, he will generally take care of most of those cows, and Gary will go through a good bit of the fertility issues with stock bulls further on. So there are helps or aids to breeding with AI. So some of the new things that are available, pre-breeding heat detection is quite important. So note down any heats before you start breeding. So your earlier calving cows, that will be hopefully the first to come into heat. They may have cycled once or twice before you want to start actually breeding. So get your notepad and pen or go into the notes section of your mobile phone and just jot down names, or we'll say tag numbers of cows and the date they were in season, we'll say, and then you can sort of roughly work 17 to 23 days later on when they should be due for service. Most of them will come around day 21. Tail painting, KMR, scratch pads, there's loads of those sort of aids to breeding. Tail painting, you just putting an emulsion paint on the tail of the cow. It'll when it's wiped off by a mount of another cow, then you can detect when, we'll say, a cow was in heat or is about to come in heat. KMRs are something similar. Scratch pads then are kind of sticky pads that you put on the tail of the cow. They're like a scratch card that when they're mounted by a second cow, it rubs off the kind of the gray scratchy area, and then you can see what's on heat. Vasectomized bulls are very common. For example, there's one important point with vasectomized bulls is to vasectomize them and do the operation at least 6 weeks before intended use, because the semen that's served by a bull today was actually, how will I say, it started in the bull 6 weeks previously. So semen is good for 6 weeks. So you wouldn't want to let in a vasectomized bull 3 weeks after the operation, because potentially he can still breed for 3 weeks. Chin ball harness is another kind of a tool. We'll say it's a halter with a ball underneath. It's like a ballpoint pen that's filled with a kind of an ink, and every time we'll say the vasectomized bull will say rises on a cow, he leaves the color of the paint, we'll say, on the actual back of the cow, and then you know she's in heat. But just be careful, put them on 2 to 3 weeks before the introduction to the herd, because they do tend to loosen a bit. Chin resting, a normal, simple enough sort of a thing. Chin, we'll say resting on one cow, that means she's starting to come into heat. Mucose vaginal discharge, or better known as clear slime, the obvious one when she's in season and heat. There are new technologies too. So I've listed off a few of them there: moo heat, estrus alert patches, digit animal, hard word to say, moo monitor, and pedometers. So the first few there basically are their collars that detect extra movement. They go around the neck of the cow or heifer, and they detect additional over normal movement of the animal. And what it will do is the program will send you a text to your mobile phone to say that your animal is coming in heat. Pedometers then are slightly different. They're common enough in the dairy industry. They're collars around the legs of the animal. So again, they detect additional movement, and they'll send you a text to your mobile phone to tell you the animal is in heat. Synchronization using PG or progesterone, it can be a very useful tool for some farmers, will say, who have large numbers of, will say, replacement heifers, for example. They want to get them sort of tightened up and get them AI'd at the one kind of time. So there is a kind of I would say, progesterone kind of a chart on how to actually do this, and you can sort of get that with your vet. So basically, if what it means is that you fix time AI, and we'll see you can get a large number of animals done at the one time. It brings them all to synchronize their heats. And the other benefit is it generally, if there's a repeat, we'll say you will get a batch of animals to repeat secondly or thirdly, and you can AI them roughly at the same time. So as with any of the drugs and prescription-only medicines and things like that, always contact your vet regarding any drugs and things like that. So key areas to maximize fertility. So there's a couple of handy kind of things. The first thing, and it's very practical and it does work, is early spring calving cows, for example, and autumn calving cows. A restricted suckling does tend to work. So that maybe do it twice a day, AM and PM. So calves get used to it very, very quickly, and it brings forward heats in cows. So you might ask me, what do you mean by restricted suckling? So restricted suckling is where, we'll say, with autumn-born calves, you allow them access to a field beside the shed, we'll say a paddock, sheltered paddock, whatever. The calves go out, they're in that during the day, they're a lot healthier, they're out in the fresh air, and they come in and they suck the cows, we'll say, via creep twice a day. And what that does is it breaks the bond between the cow and the calf. And also it leaves calves a lot more docile and being used to handled. The same applies for younger calves that don't go out, that are, we'll say, blocked in a creep area, strawberry creep area, for example. We'll say the same thing, and you let them in twice a day. And the other advantage of that is you can also see when calves are sick or maybe getting a touch of pneumonia or of a temperature, because they're not, they don't suck the cows. So what should happen is they all go out and suck their own cows. And the last kind of advantage is you can see the kind of bully calf that's trying to rob milk out of every other cow, and you can make sure they all get their fair share. Another key area to maximize fertility is to avoid using very hard calving bulls. So with easier calving bulls, what tends to happen is cows clean quicker and return to heat faster. So that's a very important point. Another one that I've come up with is health vaccinations at the correct times. For example, vaccinating for BVD, the booster ideally should be given at least 30 days pre-breeding. So what happens in a lot of cases, heifers are done, no problem at all. They get 2 shots 30 days apart, and the second shot is given at least a month before the start of breeding. But what sometimes happens is when the cow comes around then afterwards, some farmers forget to give her the booster. And just a kind of a little trick I kind of use myself at home on my own farm is that what I find is when I'm dehorning a calf, I always BVD inject the cow, the mother, with the likes of, say, Bovilis into the muscle 2 mil. And that way I know that once the calf is dehorned, that the cow has been done at the same time, and then I can forget about it. Suckler cow condition is important as well. So cows' heifers should be on an upward plane of nutrition. There is a 10 to 15% decline in conception rate for each half a unit drop in body condition score between calving and breeding. So always on an upward plane in nutrition, and it'll sort out a lot of those sort of problems. No, excuse me, heifers now. So if you breed your own heifers and you're not split calving spring and autumn, then you have to either calve at either approximately 24 months or 36 months. It's different if you're calving split. We'll say, what I mean by split is maybe you calve half your herd in February, March, and half your herd in sort of October, November. That way, if you breed your own, you can, we'll say, calve at 30 months, spring born calves calving at 30 months in autumn, and vice versa. Cull hard for poor fertility, you can breed it out. So it's important that, we'll say, like the sheep farmers, will say, who are very good at breeding replacements, and try and breed your replacement females from your fertile early calving cows. And that way you kind of eliminate out your poorer breeders. Now, kind of going back to the 3-year-old heifers, it's your own choice, but if you're breeding your own and you're calving at 3 years, those heifers are around the farm for a long time before they generate any income. The 2-year-old heifers, which is the other extreme calving, also needs a lot of management. It can be done, but they have to be managed separately. Very easy calving Angus bulls, feeding beforehand, suitable feeding, and also feeding for mainly as a separate group for the year after because they're still growing. Now, if you're in the other kind of camp and you're buying in calf heifers, you can buy at calving time to suit your own system. So that's fine. You can do what you like that way. So, but ideally, we'd always recommend that you try and calve them 3 weeks before your cows calve to give them a chance to, we'll say, cycle a second time before, because they tend to be that bit later than the cows. Just good practice, we'll say, if you are buying in calf heifers, to buy from a healthy herd. There's some very, very good farmers out there who specialize in selling good quality springing heifers. There's loads of sales on at the moment. I do know a few clients will say that have linked up with, we'll say, very good semental breeders, for example, who produce heifers from their own kind of stock bulls. So it's an all-in job rather than buying in weanlings and bringing them on. In that way, you can sort of produce. You can buy from producers who have, we'll say, you can see mothers, sisters, whatever on farm, and it's well worth paying a few euro extra for those sort of heifers. And you know, if you find if they get on well with you 1 year, you'll always go back and buy again. You know, the following years. Factors affecting heat activity and detection. So observation in the early morning and late evening is the best times to pick up heats. Heat activity is actually less in suckler cows than dairy cows, and you tend to have less activity indoors. So your autumn calvers, you tend to have a little bit less activity than you would have, you would say, your spring calvers, which would be out on grass. The reason being that, we'll say, that you tend to get less mounting on slats. When you think about it, we'll say a cow that rises on a cow on slats and she falls off the back and she drops her 2 front feet on slats, it's quite hard on the joints, and they might do that once or twice. But whereas if they're outside and they're landing on, we'll say, on the grass or on soil, it's a lot more comfortable. There's a kind of a cushion effect with the soil. Group size then is another important issue. So cows will bring each other into heat naturally through natural synchronization. And that kind of links back to a tight calving pattern, the 6-week calving pattern, in that we'll say the more cows you have calving tightly, generally what you'll find is you'll have more cows coming in heat or bulling at the one time. So you can see more activity, and it does help. Average duration of standing heat can range from 8 to 14 hours, but the range is huge. It could be anything from 3 hours to 30 hours for both cows and heifers, and that doesn't include silent heats. When we'll say you could have a cow or a heifer in heat on slats, for example, but she doesn't show it. Whereas you'll have if you have a bull with them, we'll say outside or whatever, he will pick a lot of those cows up. So that was the first part of the presentation on the breeding end of things. But I think it's very important to also discuss health and safety at breeding time. Very, very important topic to go through. So I don't want to alarm you now, but just workplace deaths in agriculture and forestry over 10 years. So I don't have too many graphs. I'm not a big believer in bamboozling people with graphs and things. But the important point to take from this graph here is there's a number of we'll say occupations down the left-hand side. We'll say starting at the bottom from administration right up the top to agriculture, and you can see the line right across the top is the number of deaths. So it's important to try and take it in that agriculture is by far the biggest, we'll say, problem in that kind of case. The blue line represents employees on farms. The yellow, or the sort of yellowy greeny line, is the self-employed, which is generally the farmers themselves. And then the purple line is non-workers. The figures are way too big and they have to come down. So agriculture, forestry and fishing. So just to let you know, the rate of fatal accidents in agriculture, forestry and fishing increased during the 2010s from 11.6 per 100,000 workers in 2009 to 21.4 per 100,000 workers in 2019. So it's a huge, huge problem that has to be sorted out. Just kind of breaking down the figures from agriculture and forestry. So I've kind of, done a wee pie chart there of all the different types, but the worst culprit there is tractors and vehicles, which is 91 deaths over the last 10 years in the blue out of the total 210. But the second worst culprit is what I'm kind of talking about is livestock, 39 deaths or 19%. Way, way, way too high. It has to come down. So breaking down the livestock thing, and these figures can surprise some people. The cow was said deaths as a result of cows has been 12 out of the 39 in the last from 2011 to 2020. The bull was 7, but younger cattle was actually 14. So the message I take from that is you have to be careful with every type of animal. There's no safe animal, every animal. Every year, farmers and family members are killed or maimed by cattle. Every month, hundreds of farms on farms are injured by cattle, and every day there are countless near misses in handling cattle. These are the problems that happen on every farm that aren't reported in the media, but are very, very important. So we'll say, just to kind of a thing here, dangerous situations involving cattle are almost entirely avoidable. Not always, but almost entirely avoidable. You or a family member needn't become a statistic. So it might mean very simple changes on your farm. It might mean spending a little bit of money on safety issues or safety, we'll say, solutions to problems on farm. But a lot of the accidents and deaths on farm are avoidable. That's the important thing to take. A few always kind of messages. So make sure handlers are competent and agile. So whoever's handling, whether it's you or a son or a daughter or a husband or wife or grandson or grandparents or anyone who's handling stock, that they're competent and agile. Always work out an escape route or refuge in advance of working with cattle. That's what I'm dealing with tonight. No one understands the basics of cattle behavior, and they're well documented, and there's lots of scientific papers and information on them. A practical thing on used bulls that produce docile offspring. Docility is a heritable trait, so the other way of sort of turning that is wild bulls or wild cows, it's in their genetics and they can pass it off to their offspring, and the same thing with quieter animals. So your wild cow will say that's breeding a very good heifer calf. I would encourage you to get rid of her and not sort of keep her, because that can pass down the line. You can breed them out. And what I mean by getting rid of them, I mean, we'll say, beefing them right through to slaughter and not passing the problem on to another farmer. Remember that cows or heifers that are on heat are unpredictable. And I use the example of, we'll say, you could be up early in the morning, 5 or 6, cleaning out drinking troughs, we'll say, before you head to work. We'll say that, cows have dunged in them, and we'll say there's cows or heifers in the pen, cows in heat. Next thing, she tries to rise on top of you because she's not herself because she's on heat. Try to keep cattle calm when handling them as best you can. Again, that's learned experience. It can be done. Use a stick to assist cattle in directing cattle, to assist. I'd never encourage anyone to go beating cattle. It's purely to sort of direct them. Watch for warning signs of animal aggressiveness, especially bulls and newly calved cows. There's a lot of cows calving at the moment, and be very, very careful, and I'll touch a little bit that in a few minutes. Cull any fractious or difficult cattle as soon as possible. Exercise caution administering veterinary treatment. So again, a lot of that boils down to good facilities and spending a little bit more on the crush, or a lock and gate in the crush, or a head scoop to make life a bit easier. The cattle are tight, they haven't too much space to either injure you or themselves. Wear protective clothing and footwear. So it might be something simple like steel toe cap Wellingtons, will say. Give an extra €20 for the wellies. It might save you a couple of toes if a cow or a bull or something stands on them. Use well-designed facilities. Again, I'm trying to urge people, it's not about spending 100 or 200,000 on big fancy sheds. It's small things on, we'll say, on yards and sheds and things like that. Regularly check and maintain facilities such as the crush, gate latches and fences and things like that. A simple thing with fences is, we'll say, if you have a bull in a field and it's electric fence, to make sure there's actually power in the fence. Could be a battery fence where the battery is worn down, or there could be a problem in the fence and the fence isn't getting 5,000 volts. Gate latches, little things like springs in gate latches. Keep ground surfaces clean as far as possible to avoid tripping hazards. So um, hazards and problems happen when there's dirty yards or there's tripping hazards, and we'll say animals are moving at speed or people are moving at speed, and next thing they trip across something and can cause injuries. Um, Never put an inexperienced handler or a child at risk with cattle. Very, very important. Handle cattle or get others to handle them if there is a lack of competence and confidence to do the work safely. Don't try and be Superman or Superwoman. You need help. If you need help, you need help. Another kind of point that I think is very important to raise is a lot of the people on this call tonight were born and raised on farms. But if you have, we'll say, brothers or sisters, children giving you a hand on a farm, we'll say they might be coming from Dublin or Cork or wherever for, we'll say, during the summer when this lockdown thing eases off. You might presume that they know what they're doing, but if they were never raised on the farm, they probably haven't a clue of a lot of the things that comes naturally to somebody raised on a farm. And it's important, especially with younger children or teenagers, that they want to help you, that they have to be kind of educated and explained to exactly why you want them to do things or what's dangerous and what's not dangerous. Don't presume they know the stuff. Never turn your back on a bull or trust a bull, no matter how docile he may appear. Never stress or arouse cattle unnecessarily. You don't have to do it. Keep nice and calm. Never keep dangerous cattle. I know it's easy to say, but try and cull them out as best you can. Never suddenly enter the animal's blind spot. And you ask me, what do I mean by a blind spot? A blind spot is the part directly behind the cow or the heifer. Will say if you're midline, it will say your nose is in line with the tail of the cow when you're just behind her. She cannot see you, so you could spook her suddenly, and next thing she gets frustrated. Never rush into the animal's flight zone. My neighbours to be laughing at me at home. I'm always talking to cattle, and it might sound a bit stupid, but there is a reason for it. In that, we'll say if I'm going towards the shed and I'm talking to the cattle, then I know they know I'm coming. They can hear me, and I don't spook them or fluster them and that kind of thing. And they get used to it too. Never beat or shout cattle unnecessarily because they remember it, and you don't need to do it. The last thing is crazy altogether. Never move cattle on a public road at night. Um, Now, you'd often come across cattle or sheep on the road where they break out, but people that are moving them on the road late at night are crazy altogether. We'll say you come on, we'll say if your dims or your brights, and next thing the cows or cattle see that, um, we'll say they go crazy altogether. They get blinded. And also then we'll say people will be driving at speed and come on to, we'll say, go around the bend and meet cattle. It's a recipe for absolute disaster. Just a little bit on bull housing, just to kind of sort of let you know, I'm a third generation bull breeder myself at home, and I've a good bit of experience dealing with bulls. And I'm also of the attitude that you learn every single day. The day you don't learn is the day you're finished. A well-designed bull pen is essential for the proper management of the bulls when he's away from the herd. And Gary will do a very good presentation later on semen testing and fertility testing, but this is just the safety point of view. The bull pen ideally should be located so that the bulls can see other cattle, kind of stimulate them, and daily farm activity on the farmer. So you don't put him away in a dark shed on his own where he cannot see anything or he doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't get stimulated. And then when he comes out of the shed, he gets very excited. The structure must be strong and high enough to stop them escaping. So I always encourage vertical bars and gates. And the reason for that is that we'll say if a bull we'll say tries to cross a gate, we'll say generally if there's vertical bars in it, the feet can go between the bars rather than getting caught on the top of a bar, a horizontal bar, and break a leg very, very easy. I use high grade sort of tubular steel, 4 mil steel, we'll say, and I'd always go for 80 mil or 3-inch bars, heavy duty stuff for bulls. A well-designed bull pen will allow the bull to be fed and watered from outside the pen. A lot of the modern bull houses incorporate a feeding stand, loose house area, exercise area, and a service pen, all under the one roof and interlinked by gates. Now, that's the Rolls Royce of a kind of a bull house, but you can actually adapt a lot of, I would say, bull houses quite reasonably money-wise, and I'd have no bother spending money on adapting a bull house, from a health and safety point of view. Um, A drop-down gate operated remotely from outside the pen enables the stockman or stockwoman to isolate the bull inside the feeding stand so that he can work in the other areas free from danger. It's a personal opinion of mine. I don't like having bulls on slats. We have quite a good few bulls at home, and basically what we tend to do is bring the cow or the heifer to the bull, let him serve the cow, and take the cow away, because the bull can be put into a proper house. Now, the other thing as well is bulls love routine. So generally what we try and do is we'll say, bring the cow or the heifer to the bull, let him serve her. We can direct him away from the cow back into the house, and then feed him a bit of meal or a bit of silage or hay or something like that as a kind of reward. And they get used to the routine of doing that. Detailed design specifications for bull facilities are available from the department on the website. There's loads of drawings and things there if you want to get ideas on how to do bull pens. Managing bulls. So all bulls are potential killers, even seemingly quiet bulls. So farmers and persons handling bulls must treat them with caution and respect at all times. So older farmers are at most at risk due to reduced mobility and speed. There's some older farmers I've come across are very fit, healthy sort of people, and a lot of younger people are not as fit and healthy. So the point I'm trying to make is that whoever's dealing with the bull has to be fit and healthy and be able to move at their ease with the bulls. Bull's temperament changes as it matures, from a playful aggression as a yearling to defensive or territorial aggression as a 2 to 3 year old. Another thing we sort of try and encourage as pedigree breeders is try and encourage children not to pet pedigree calves or any sort of calf for that matter. It's fine, we'll say if a calf is 50, 60 kilos as a suck, they're lovely and playful and stuff like that, but like there's stock bulls out there that can come into 1500, 1600 kilos. If they were petted as calves, they kind of get used to it. They come up to you for petting as a bull, and they can do you serious, serious damage. So try and get children out of the habit of petting calves, especially I would say bull calves or females for that are being kept on for cows. Persons handling bulls should be aged between 18 and 65 years of age and fit and agile. They should be fully aware of the dangers when handling bulls and properly trained. Again, the age doesn't matter as long as you are fit and healthy. As I said, you can have some people well into their 70s or 80s who are very fit and healthy, you know. Managing bulls. So all bulls should be ringed in the nose when 10 months old, and the ring should be examined regularly. So if you're buying a bull, legally he has to have a ring on him. Now, as pedigree breeders, we have to ring them before we sell them on to farmers. And Gary will go through the whole fertility testing of those bulls before sale. The other important thing we'll say, ringing bulls. I ring my own bulls at home. It's very important to ring. This is more for pedigree people. We'll say selling bulls. Try and ring the bull towards the front of the nose, right at the very front of the nose, not further back into the nose, because your ring meets more meat in the nose. You have more control of we'll say the bull. We'll say when the ring is towards the front. I'd always encourage, we'll say, generally we use 2 3/4 inch rings in Charolais bulls at home. We'll say that would be bulls about 10 months of age. From an early age, the bull should learn to associate the presence of people with pleasant things such as feeding, grooming, exercise. In all cases, without exception, have an aggressive bull sent to the abattoir. So again, if you have a bull at home, it can happen to anyone. He gets bad-tempered, something goes wrong. Do not pass him on to someone else or send him to the mart for breeding. Get him killed. The other way I'd sort of to kind of go around that is, we'll say if you were in the opposite position, we'll say, right, and you were buying a bull, and next thing you bought a bull and he was a bad-tempered fella and he does damage to you or your family, it's not on. I don't agree with it at all. When a bull is taken from a pen, he should be led using suitable equipment, head chains, bull poles, and leading ropes, and never attempt to handle a bull on your own. Always have at least 2 people to help you with the bull, generally 1 in front, 1 behind, and always have the mobile phone with you and well charged, just in case anything goes wrong. So the bull in the open field. So the risk of attack from stock bulls running with the herd is greatest during the summer months when the most mating is occurring. So the cows are in heat, they're coming a bulling. So the testosterone levels of the bull are up at the maximum. So he's there to do one job. Bulls blocking and rounding are very, very dangerous. So just be aware of this. People that would say mightn't be used to, or would say the first time with bulls, What I mean by blocking is, we'll say a particular bull, if you want to get cows and calves out of a field, out through a gate, and he goes to the gate and he puts himself across the gate and blocks the cows from leaving the field. Be very careful, he's about to turn. And also rounding cows in the field is another very serious thing that farmers would ask us about on a regular basis. So where they're rounding up cattle, they're protecting them, and if you try and go near them, then you'll do serious damage to. I'm not trying to frighten people. It's just a thing to educate you and be aware of. Avoid grazing a bull in a field where there is a right of way or where members of the public have access. You might be well educated on bulls and you know how to manage them, but if there's a right of way, you cannot allow for someone else's stupidity. That's the way I'd put it. Some idiot comes into a field, we'll say with a dog, which is a terrible thing with a bull that's not used to it, or walks right up through a bull. So the best situation in that, if there's right of way, keep them away from that particular ground. Safety warning signs of the bull's presence should always be posted on gates. It's a warning thing that someone, hopefully if they've half a brain, they'll keep out of the actual field. Managing bulls. So any field in which a bull is kept should be securely fenced and gates should be well maintained. Good quality gates in the field that the bull is kept in. Again, I'd go for the homemade gates, the heavy duty gates. Make them high enough that they're not tempting for the bull to try and cross. Aggressive bulls should not be allowed to run with the herd. Again, if you know there is a problem, don't let them out with the cows, get rid of them. Consider using a tractor or other suitable farm vehicle, for example, a jeep, as a mobile sanctuary when you need to go into a field where the bull is running with cows. So if you're not sure if it's a big field, ground might be rough, you mightn't be able to come away from the bull that easily. The tractor, and just do that the first few times just till you get comfortable with the situation. If cornered by a bull, it is best not to move too fast, but to move slowly out of the bull's flight zone. That's important. Turning and running from a bull is kind of inviting him to chase you, and they will usually be faster than you as well. So if there's no refuge point to escape, then moving sideways kind of confuses them a bit. That's the worst case scenario. No bull can be trusted, and they will be unpredictable at some time in their lifetime, and they can settle again afterwards. This applies even to young bulls and seemingly quiet bulls. And the requirement to keep a bull for breeding purposes can be largely eliminated if artificial insemination is used for all mating. This is the safest option, but as I said earlier on, it's not always practical. That's the breeding section done. Now, this is a section I wanted to do myself because it's very, very important. It's about farm safety and the family. So with all animals, children are at risk, in particular from bulls, rams, boars, and horses, whether it be stallions or mares. So please try and exclude children from danger areas. Fit correct fencing and gates where potential dangerous animals are kept, and supervise children when they're feeding or close to animals. I'm all for sort of educating young children and they're growing up on farms and things like that, and looking after ewes and lambs and cows and calves and stuff like that, but they have to be educated as to the correct way of doing it. Do's then: talk to children about farm safety and safety on your farm. The second point there, I think, is very, very important. Carry out a risk assessment to identify potential hazards to children around the farmyard and buildings. So anyone that's on the call tonight will say that's in the quality assurance scheme with Board B. One of the requirements is to carry out a risk assessment, and you fill in the small booklet. It's very, very important that you just don't go and tick the boxes on the risk assessment. Sit down with your family, sit down with your children and go through it, and bring it around the yard with you. And it's a very, very good practical way of educating both the children and the farmer as well onto what potential hazards and problems are on the farm. And it kind of forces you to correct them and fix them. Very, very useful tool to sit down with your children to do. Provide a secure area for young children. So for playing in, an area all on its own for that specific purpose. Do supervise children on the farm at all times. Keep children out of work areas where possible. Supervision is very, very important. Keep children away from tractors and machineries that are in use. We all know about PTO shafts. Even we'll say dealing with loaders and trips and falls and all that sort of stuff. Keep children a safe distance from livestock. Cover and protect water hazards on the farm, and put up warning signs in dangerous areas and explain what they mean to children. I find dealing with nieces and nephews and things like that is that they're like sponges. They soak it all up as to when it's explained to them what the reason for the danger is. If you don't, then I'll be wrapping up very shortly. Don't allow children to play unsupervised on the farm. Don't allow children on tractors unless the tractor is fitted with a properly designed and fitted passenger seat with seat belts inside the safety cab or frame. I've seen two different age groups for that, 7 years and 8 years. You can err on the side of caution and go for 8 years, but make sure if there's children in the cab of the tractor with you, it has to be with a seatbelt. You're in control of the tractor. You know when the load is going to come behind you. You're working the clutch or the loader. They don't, and if there isn't a seatbelt, the force of the tractor will push them forward towards the windscreen. Don't allow children to get potentially close to dangerous farm animals or water hazards or harmful substances. And I would include there, for example, we'll say sprays, insecticides, pesticides, that kind of thing. There's a very, very good amount of information on the Health and Safety Authority website. And I came across this myself, putting the presentation together. It's a booklet, will say, only a giant can lift a bull, and it's designed for young children. And basically, it's stories about keeping safe on the farm by children themselves from all over Ireland. I was just flicking through it before I came on. I think there's about 4 or 5 from County Sligo, and the same from Donegal and Leitrim. But it's in a language that they know themselves. It kind of subtly educates them. It's a very, very good book, and I'd kind of encourage anyone to get on the website, the Health and Safety website, and download it. And I think it's quite a good educational resource. So take-home messages, you'll be glad to hear. I'm winding up now. Maximize fertility in your herd. There are lots of aids to breeding, and never trust a bull. Never trust a newly calved cow. And the reason why I kind of highlighted that in red and underlined it is there's a lot of calving going on at the moment. Keep yourself and your family safe on the farm. So thank you. That's me, Cian, now.
Okay, thanks, Brendan. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to move straight to Gary. Gary, if you want to share your screen there, and there are a number of questions coming in, and if you still want to keep your questions and comments, you can send them into the panel there, and we'll allow a little time at the end to make sure that any questions are answered.
Right. Basically, what I'm going to talk about this afternoon or this evening is basically the management of bull fertility in the suckler beef herds. It's not sort of something you hear too often being spoken about, but look, it has a significant impact on the suckler herds. So I'm going to go through a few slides here, and before I start, I'd like to acknowledge 2 people, Professor David Kenny, and also my local vet, Kieran Marley from Mulroy Veterinary Practice. As you see later on, we've made 2 short videos. There is a longer video on less edited that you can download on YouTube, and you can watch it in your own time. So basically, management of bull fertility in the suckler beef herds. Okay, so look, bull fertility is central to genetic progress for beef herds. You know, generally, the better the bull that you have on your farm, generally the better progeny that will be produced. And suppose a significant thing here is 80% of calves born in the suckler herd are sired by natural service. So the bull plays a significant role within the suckler herd in Ireland. And he basically contributes to 50% of herd genetics. So basically half the genetics is coming from the female, and the other half is coming from the bull himself. And in Ireland, look, on average, the suckler herds are generally small in nature. The average herd size is roughly around 18 cows, and the predominant use of single sire mating. So basically, there's only generally, because the herds are small, there's generally only one bull running with the herd. So fertility of the stock bull is of major importance to both the size and the timing of the subsequent calf crop. So basically, if your bull's not fertile, your cows are not in calf, and subsequently, you're going to have a very low calf crop the following year. So that's a little bit of background. So in relation to bull fertility, most bulls, as you can see there from the figures, are very few bulls will be totally infertile, only maybe between 3 and 5%. But this figure down below here, between 10 to 25% of bulls are subfertile. And so what does that actually mean? It basically means that he'll get cows and calf over a period of time, but he's subfertile. So symptoms may be slow, and it's hard to recognize. But symptoms may show 2 to 3.5 months after the insult. So basically, what generally happens is cows are taken in later on in the year, and maybe for housing, and it's at that stage you start to notice cows maybe bulling in the shed that actually should be maybe 3 to 4 months in calf at this stage. The other thing that should be noted here, it takes 70 days to produce sperm, okay, and it takes a further 2 weeks to travel through the epididymis. So a subfertile bull is not what you want on the farm. And a vet down in Kerry, Donald Murphy from Rathmore Veterinary Practice, they did testing over a 10-year period of 512 bulls. And out of the 512 bulls that were tested, 28% failed the fertility test. Okay, and that's what we're going to just concentrate a wee bit further on here tonight. So what is subfertility? It's maybe caused by low libido, so basically the bull's not interested, poor sperm quality or quantity, defects or physical factors affecting the bull's mobility. So that's the bull's, his movement and or mating ability. So can the bull actually get up and mount a cow and do what he's supposed to do? While a subfertile bull may be capable of getting some cows pregnant, what you generally find is you've got low pregnancy rates, extending calving interval. So what you would be expecting, if you have a bull that is very fertile, and most farmers now are calving probably currently, maybe from mid-February onwards here in Donegal, that you'd like a nice tight calving pattern. You'll generally find when you have an infertile bull or subfertile bull that you've got an extended calving interval. So basically, cows are maybe calving from maybe mid-February right through and maybe to mid-May, okay? And subsequently, because he's not getting all your cows and calves, and because you're calving maybe later than you'd normally want, you've got reduced calving weights, weaning weights, because your cows aren't calving earlier than now, carrying longer, or not being put in calf. So there's basically higher culling because cows are empty. When you come to housing times and maybe get someone out to scan your cows, you realize a lot of the cows could be empty, and then you have extra cost in culling these cows. So subfertility is an issue, but it can be identified, and it's action that's required early to prevent this from happening. So there's no guarantee that a bull will retain his fertility from season to season, or even within a season. Just because a bull put all your cows and calves last year doesn't mean that he'll do it this year. And I've had experience of this myself. 2 different issues, 2 different stock bulls, but it was caught early because I was keeping records and watching the cows repeat. You have to watch between maybe 17 to 25 days after last service to pick this up. So you'll be observing a bull the same as you will be observing cows for AI. So subfertile bulls often go undetected until late in the season. And look, Brendan spoke there about, because herd sizes are small, lots of farmers are part-time farming or off to work early in the morning, not back in the evening. And, they put the bull out with the cows, and look, they expect the bull to do the business. And it's not, a lot of these problems don't come about until later in the season, okay? So you basically need to be continually vigilant and to basically take corrective action sooner rather than later. So again, look, this is observing your cows morning and evening. If you're off to work, just maybe taking a moment and taking a record of what cows are bulling and watching them for repeats. Now, if you have a lot of repeats between 17 to 25 days after last service, you've got an issue. And at that stage, you maybe need to be getting your vet in to do an examination of your stock bull. So this is, again, this is a bit of research that was done by Doreen Cordon from Munster Cattle Breeding Group. It's basically looking at bulls that were in BDGB herds born in 2013 and then were kept in those herds up until 2018. and she looked at the reasons that the bulls were basically culled out of suckler herds. So over that period of time, there was 306 bulls culled, okay? And you can see here over on the right-hand side that between 7.2% were slaughtered for infertility, but also there another 23.2% in for injury. Now, a lot of bulls can get injured basically when they're trying to mate the cow, basically broken pizzle, etc. So basically, when they're trying to mount the cow, that they actually can injure and hurt themselves. And unfortunately, at that case, then they actually have to be culled because sorry, they can't mend up again. So basically, you can see here that infertility and injury can account to nearly up to 30% of bulls being culled on farms. I'm not going to get into this in big detail here tonight because this is basically the reproductive system of a bull, and you can see the anatomy here of the bull. So there's lots of different things here that can go wrong in a bull. Unfortunately, everyone thinks a bull's indestructible, but unfortunately, there is areas here that you can have issues, whether it's the testicles, the penis, or etc. So basically, this is the overall reproductive system of the bull. So basically, what I want to concentrate on tonight here is sort of something that a lot of farmers are maybe not aware of, and but I know a lot of farmers that breed pedigree bulls for sale, and that will be a lot more aware of this this particular evaluation, and it's called basically bull breeding soundness evaluation. So what actually is it? It's basically this needs to be carried out probably by your veterinary surgeon at least 60 days prior to the start of the breeding season. So we're now at the early days of March, probably about 2 months out now from breeding on most farms, maybe a bit later, maybe mid-May. But this is sort of something you could think about doing now from now on. The only problem with this, and even talking to my own vet, is it is a bit time consuming, and at this time of the year, most vets are very, very busy. But it is sort of something you should consider doing on your farm to make sure that your bull is up for the job later in the season. So again, if you do it early enough, like 60 days prior to breeding, it facilitates retesting and ultimately timely replacement of the bulls that may fail the examination. So just because your bull was 100% okay last year does not necessarily mean that he's okay for the coming breeding season. And the British Cattle Veterinary Association introduced a certification protocol for evaluating bulls, okay? And it covers sort of 4 main key areas. First area they look at is basically the physical examination of the bull. So what do they mean by the physical examination? It basically means basically the heart and lungs of the animal. They look at the eyes, they look at the mouth, they look at the locomotion, so basically the legs and feet. Then they look at his testicles or his scrotum, etc. These are all areas that are basically examined by a trained vet. The second part then involves basically taking a semen sample from the bull and basically looking at the semen then through a microscope to see the amount of sperm, and to also to see are the sperm moving correctly, etc. The third section that isn't really carried out here is basically assessment of the mating ability. So this is actually watching the bull basically mate a female that's actually in heat. Now, this is not generally performed here in Ireland. So basically, this is sort of something you as a farmer need to watch to see is actually a bull able to mate either the heifer or the cow that's actually in heat. And then after this is done, basically a classification of the overall prognosis. Is the bull fit for purpose? So the next part of this is basically, so bulls failing to reach a certain threshold are classified as unsatisfactory. And this was found, as I sort of said earlier, by Donald Murphy, that he found that nearly 28% of bulls were basically unsatisfactory for basically going along with a group of females to get them pregnant. The system doesn't classify a bull as fertile or infertile. The objective of this is to reduce the risk of poor fertility performance in stock bulls. And look, any farmer going to any of the premier sales to buy a bull, most bulls that are entered for those sales actually have to go through a bull breeding soundness evaluation. So they actually have to go through this, and if they don't pass this evaluation, they're not allowed to enter the society sale. And like any farmer buying a bull, you know, you should be requesting that this is carried out before you purchase the bull, because there's no point in purchasing a bull and 2 to 3 months later you're back to the original owner of the bull saying this bull is firing blanks and he's not working. No one wants to see that actually happen. So basically what I've basically, in conjunction here with my local vet, Kieran Marley from Mulroy Veterinary Practice, back in probably about 8 weeks ago, we did adhere to COVID guidelines, and we kept our 2 meters distance. And we did a video. There's 2 short clips here. They're heavily edited for tonight to keep within time. But I'm going to play these 2 videos now sort of back to back. The first one is looking basically at the physical examination of the bull. The second video then is basically looking at the semen analysis. And I should stress too, the first part of the video is basically showing myself talking, and you'll see a bull standing behind me, but just from health and safety point of view, I had a safety access straight in front of me.
Yeah, it's on mute there, Gary.
It's all right.
Just beside your pause button there.
Yeah.
Let's try again.
When breeding season will start in earnest, with over 80% of suckler cows mated naturally, one of the things that farmers could do now is to get a bull breeding soundness evaluation carried out by their vet. I'm going to be joined later today by my local vet, Kieran Marley, to carry out this task. Joined today with Kieran Marley, veterinary practitioner with Mulroy Veterinary, and we're going to carry out a pre-breeding inspection on a young bull here.
We might just have a quick look at the body condition score. So we can see here this animal's actually in good condition. He's got a nice covering over the ribs and representation up there. He's just perfect for breeding. Probably body condition score of 4. So heart and lungs are normal. His heart rate is a little bit elevated, but it's just because he's under crush and he's haltered. His temperature now. So that's totally normal. His temperature's fine. Okay, so we're just going to look there at his teeth, his dental alignment, and you can see there he's not overshot, he's not undershot, he's just perfectly aligned. Okay, so we're just after examining his testicles there, and you just have a good feel of the testicle itself and the epididymis. The epididymis is where the semen is stored, the testes is where the semen is made. So both of those are fine in both testicles, and his testicles measurement is 32 centimeters, which is just perfect for his age. I'm just going to go now in his eyes, the pulley and the prostate, and hopefully once we start to see a drip, we'll start collecting the semen then and produce the electrojaculator.
Okay, move to the next slide here. So basically that first little video there, basically look, it's basically the physical examination of the bull, and now the second part here is basically the collection of semen and the analysis process. Okay.
After hitting the pulley on my hand and his rectum there, and I'm just putting a bit of pressure and giving it a rub and circular motion just to stimulate him, so you can feel the pulley, the seminal vesicles and the prostate. So I'm just getting a rub on all of them. So we just want this here pointing down towards the prostate and the pulley. So just lift the tail. After massaging them and stuff with my hand, it should go in a bit easier now. And the tail should hold it once he sets it into him. Tightened up a bit. Now this is our electrojaculator. our pulsator, and we've already got a program saved here, so we're just going to go on the programmed one and press start, and it's started there now. So we're just going to start collecting from now on. He hasn't protruded the penis yet, but just in case he would start to ejaculate before he protrudes it, I'm going to start collecting. So here we got the penis fully protruded out. We can see the very end of the penis itself. You can see him ejaculating there now. So there's no growths or any defects in that penis. That penis is totally normal, and he's giving us a good sample there now as well. We've got a sample here now. Now the fact that the hair there was a little bit dirty, the balls inside. We've got a little bit of dirt just through it, but we've put it on the slide here now, on this heated slide, and I already have looked at it. We'll just put another drop with that there now, and we've got a great motility there. So he is actually a grade 5. We will be saving one here for morphology. We'll put a drop of immersion oil when that is dried out and examine it under a higher magnification, and that way we'll do a sperm count. So we'll get the number of normal sperm on the slide and count them out of 100, how many normal ones we have and any defective ones that we have. So that's our bull test done. I have a cert here. This is from Veterinary Ireland. We've just edited for ourselves for Mulroy Veterinary on overall appearance, both the semen and physical appearance of the bull. He'll be passing flying colours.
So basically, I'd like to thank Kieran for doing that with me. So basically, that's basically a breeding soundness evaluation carried out. Now, I would stress there that the video is heavily edited, and you can watch a full version of the video later on. I'll show you the link. So basically, again, there was a booklet produced back in 2018 in Teagasc called Examination of Bulls for Breeding Soundness. And look, you can download it off the internet, and basically there's the link to it. And that's a very comprehensive guide. Anyone that's interested in breeding bulls and the problems and the issues that you can have, there's a lot of very good, excellent material in that actual book. And at the back of the book, then, it basically shows you the cert that the vets actually fill out to basically confirm whether your bull is suitable for breeding. So that's sort of something like I'd be telling farmers, suckler farmers now within 2 months of the breeding season coming around, that sort of something you should be considering on doing on your farm. And definitely, if you're buying in a bull, this here should be completed before purchasing a bull. So then just the other area around mating management, how many cows or heifers per bull? Look, it's often recommended to assign one female for each month of age. So if your bull's only 20 months of age, that he should be no more than 20 females should be along with him. The big issue I would see actually out on farms is young bulls are turned out with too many females. The bull is the boss in the field, and he can get injured easily. And again, a lot of young bulls are heavily fed on a starchy diet or high concentrate diet, maybe 10 plus kilos of meal, maybe up as high as 15 kilos. A lot of these bulls are coming onto farms in basically very, very good condition. And look, and I'll touch on it in a wee while later on. Young bulls, look, ideally in the first year, I know you might have paid a lot of money for a bull, but in the first year, ideally, look, the bull shouldn't be with any more than 15 to 20 cows in the first season. Basically, giving the bull confidence to grow into himself. Again, look, there is differences in bulls in terms of maturity, in terms of different breeds. Scrotal size, and Kieran mentioned there that the bull that we're testing that particular day, look, he was 18 months of age, and his scrotal circumference was basically 32 centimeters, which is ideal for that age of a bull. But again, all that information is actually in the document as well. The other thing around during the breeding season, and it's observation. Okay, so basically you should be checking your bull to see, look, is the bull able to, is he locomotion? So basically, is the bull physically able to move well? Is there any evidence of injury? Because if the bull has hurt his back, it's unlikely that if he's hurt his spine, it's unlikely that he'll try to mount or rise up on a cow because he's physically in pain. And look, the best evidence of a bull's fertility is the potential of the bull to get your cows pregnant. So basically, you know, if your cows are empty, it's basically a sign that the bull has got poor fertility. And this is what you do not want, okay? And we sort of said about keeping good records. You know, unfortunately, you know, a lot of farmers take that attitude. I'll put out the bull with the cows. That's it. The job's done. You still need to keep records and to watch out for repeats. You know, and there, as Brendan covered in his talk earlier on with AI, you know, you're still going to get the repeats even with a stock bull. So you need to be watching out. You know, from day 17 onwards to maybe day 25. And if you have a lot of repeats, you need to get your bull checked out. And if there's a problem, you're catching it early. And this is particularly very important for young bulls joining the herd. I'm conscious of time and just the difference here between young bulls and old bulls. Look, a mature bull will produce 5 times the amount of sperm per ejaculate compared to a young bull. So, you know, in an AI station, a mature bull semen would be collected maybe two to 3 times a week, when a young bull will only be collected once a week. Again, in relation to a young bull management, when you purchase a young bull, you'd ideally you want to purchase this bull at least 2 months in advance. So basically, he's acclimatizing to his new surroundings, and ideally, you would pair the bull with a heifer to allow basically to gain experience. And look, suitable accommodation here. What do we mean by suitable accommodation? It's basically suitable underneath his feet. So basically, when he goes to mount a cow, he's got confidence he's not going to slip and fall. So basically, good footing underfoot, whether it's on a straw bed or a wood chip or actually out in a small paddock. So basically, you'd watch to see that the bull actually serves the heifer or the cow, and you need to make sure that basically when you let out a young bull like this here, that the female or the cow is actually standing in heat, so she's not actually moving away from him all the time. And again, another point here that needs to be noted is to acclimatize the bull to the new diet. Look, any farmer on the talk here tonight that has gone to buy a bull, most of these bulls that are entered to premier sales, etc., they're heavily fed, and there's no getting away from that. They're on 10 plus kilos a meal, so you need to reduce them gradually off that meal, not basically cut it off them totally. And there's too many bulls. Basically, the day they're bought, the next day they could be out in the field with a batch of cows. That's a recipe for disaster. And again, the point to make here is fit and not fat. You want your stock bull fit, not fat. And look, if you go out onto farms like I do during the year, you see a lot of these bulls, you know, at the back end of the year, they're shells of themselves because they've lost so much weight. So a bull could lose up 10% of his body weight during the breeding season. And again, observe mating behavior to make sure that the bull is able to do what he's supposed to do. Is he physically large enough to basically impregnate the cow? So look, in summary, look, the bull is a valuable animal. He requires special care and attention to ensure functionality and longevity. Look, if you go out and spend a lot of money on a bull, the last thing you want to be doing is sending them basically into the factory. So basically, look, special care, especially in the first year. Don't forget about him after he finishes the breeding season. Get him built back up again. Again, purchase young bulls well in advance of the breeding season. And look, and again, you should be looking to maybe try and buy your bull from a reputable breeder or breed society sale. And never assume fertility. It's ongoing vigilance, and I've seen this in my own herd twice over the last maybe 6 years, and it's only by good vigilance that it was caught early and the bull was replaced. And as Brendan outlined earlier on tonight, look, almost take good care around bulls and never trust a bull. And just finally, just further information, the 2 links there, the one up here in the top, if you want to screenshot it, is basically this book here. And the longer version of the bull breeding soundness evaluation that was conducted there by Kieran Marley can be found at this link. It's about 9 minutes long, the video. So thank you for listening. Back to you, Cian.
That's great. Thanks, Gary. If you want to stop sharing your screen, and if Brendan is there also, Brendan, can you put back on your camera, please? I'm conscious of time. I know we're over a little bit, but and thank you for bearing with us. So I'm just going to pick a few of the questions that have come in here. The first is, I suppose we're looking for your opinion really on this one. Is cow fertility and nutrition or energy as much to blame for repeats as AI now is the way it's worded? So just wondering, do you think that, fertility, nutrition, etc.
Yeah, well,
repeat?
first of all, Keane, I want to apologize. The delay in timing is because of me, and I just wanted to sort of make sure I got the health and safety stuff out there. I think it's very, very important.
No,
Going back to the question thing, with AI, of course, there are a lot of management things on the farm as well. We don't blame it all on the AI technician. It could be, yeah, definitely, it could be the nutrition mightn't be balanced. We'll say the cow or heifer mightn't be in the correct timing window for AI. So there are a lot of variables when it comes to AI, but they would all play a part in the number of repeats, definitely, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Brendan. This one, you partially covered it, Gary. Just maybe get you to re-emphasize it. There's a question here. How many kilos of concentrate should I feed after purchasing a new stock bull? And should I continue to feed him the meal while he's running with the cows to keep up his energy, prevent him going sub-fertile? Just you might comment on that. I know you mentioned it.
Yeah, well, look, ideally, if you buy the bull 2 months in advance of the breeding season, you can reduce them gradually over the 2 months. So what you want to do here is you don't want a bull going from 10 kilos down to 0 kilos. So you basically reduce that if he was. And the best thing to do at a bull sale is to ask the owner what the bull was eating. Now, hopefully he's going to tell you what he was eating, and to reduce that accordingly over a 2 month period. Generally speaking, when an animal goes to grass like that, look, you just keep an eye on body condition, okay? And ideally, look, bulls are going to grass from mid-May onwards, and so ideally, look, if there's if there's plenty of good grass, the bull should maintain his body condition. And especially if he's a young bull and he's not overworked, like if he's run with 15 to 20 cows, it shouldn't be an issue. The issue arises where he's thrown in with too many cows. And a young bull versus an old mature bull, a young bull will run about, all day chasing maybe one cow, and he's up in a sweat, while a mature bull he's been there before. He does the business and he lies down. But again, look, it's good stockmanship, and just keep an eye. Okay,
that's great, Gary, thank you. Back to you, Brendan. There's a question here about the use of copper rings for bulls, that maybe they're a better conductor. And the point is made that somebody just had a standard ring in the bull, but wrapped copper wire around it, and thought that, that if the bull was interfering with the electric fence, that once the copper was on it, that he stopped interfering with the fence.
Yeah, it's actually a very good point. A lot of the older rings were well, every older ring basically was a copper ring. Now, I'm not an electrician, but I think with alternators that when the electricity passes through an alternator, it's through a copper coil, so it would be a good conductor of electricity. You'd see there's a lot of newer rings are brass rings. I think that's probably the point that's being made. But they're, as far as I can remember, the last time I bought them, they were all, I think, around €7.50 a piece. But yeah, it would make sense. Yeah, definitely. And if the copper ring touches the electric fence, the bull will get a fair rattle from it, because it's a good conductor of electricity. Yeah, it's a very good point. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Just two short ones then. The first question, just on this, maybe Gary, I'll go back to you. The question is, how old does the bull need to be? Now, I'm not sure is that to do with the analysis, like it came in around the time of your presentation, and then also if they're squeezed, can they still bull the cow? So just wondering about.
Yeah, well, it's going back to, right, ideally, the vets will tell you, you shouldn't really test a bull too young. Generally, if you test some bulls at 12 months of age, it can show that they're basically wouldn't maybe pass. And generally speaking, as the bull gets older and more mature, the same bull could pass that test maybe at 17, 18 months. The second question there is going back to, I think, did Brendan touch on it earlier tonight about a vasectomized bull, I think, or a teaser bull. So it's the same principle applies. Yeah, if you squeeze, if you squeeze an animal, just don't turn them out with a batch of heifers, or whatever. You would want to have them kept separate for at least maybe 4 to 6 weeks.
That's great. Thanks, Gary. And just one final one there. Either you can comment on this, and it's a general one about cows. How long would you wait for a cow to come in heat after calving? So what might you expect it between actually calving down and the cow, coming around?
Cows are very different. I've seen cows at home come in heat 28, 29 days after calving, but I would never inseminate. We'll say we AI cows as well. I would never inseminate them. I know there have been trials done in Grange where I think we'll say cows are inseminated 5 weeks after calving, and the kind of the strike rate was somewhere around the 30% mark. So it depends on if you're using what the cost of the semen is. You will get a small percentage of them in calf. But if a cow came early like that, I would generally let her run another cycle and do her the second time. And you'll be talking somewhere around 55 days plus. It gives you a better conception rate. Now, I don't know if Gary agrees or disagrees with that.
Yeah, look, that's perfect. Sorry, Gary, do you want to?
No, it's okay. Fine.
Yeah. So look, that's great. We're heading on towards 9:20, so we're well over time. So I'm going to wrap things up for this evening. Just like to thank everyone for staying on. I think nearly everybody who's on tonight stayed for the full duration of it. So thank you all for staying on for the full thing. I hopefully got some useful information. I think some very important information, both from a kind of productivity point of view and from a personal safety point of view. Next week, our topic moves on, the all-important basic payment 2021. And you should have all got your maps out over the last week or so. You can, of course, get full details of this and all our other webinars by following Teagasc SLD, Sligo Leitrim Donegal on social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and so on. Thank you for joining with us tonight. Stay safe and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.